During my baby shower, my sister announced she got into Stanford. Then they turned it into her celebration party while forcing me to scrub frosting off the floor. Mom kicked me hard and shouted, "I still see spots. You pathetic failure. Crawl on your hands and knees until it's spotless." Dad added, "One kick wasn't enough for this lazy pig. She needs to learn her place at the bottom of this family." My sister smirked. "Next time, don't try to steal attention with your boring pregnancy announcements. Even when you squeeze out that mistake, do it quietly where nobody has to fake caring about you." I didn't argue. I didn't fight back. I just quietly finished cleaning and went to bed. The next morning, my mom found something on the kitchen table and started screaming. "I'm Valerie, 28, and I've been a family scapegoat for as long as I can remember. My golden child sister, Brittany, 24, has always been the star. Perfect grades, perfect friends, perfect everything. Meanwhile, I was the disappointment who barely graduated high school, worked retail jobs, and made the mistake of getting pregnant at 27 with my boyfriend, Christopher. When I found out I was pregnant, I was actually happy. Christopher and I had been together for 3 years, and while we weren't married, we were stable and excited about starting our family. I naively thought maybe having a baby would bring my family closer together, that they'd finally see me as worthy of love and respect. How wrong I was. My mother, Linda, made it clear from day one that she was embarrassed by my pregnancy. "What will people think?" she'd say. "First you drop out of community college, now this. At least try to pretend you have some dignity left." My father, Thomas, was even worse. He'd make comments about how I was just another welfare mother in waiting and how I was dragging the family name through the mud. But Brittany was the cruelest of all. She'd make jokes about how the baby would probably be as much of a failure as its mother and how she hoped it wouldn't inherit my loser genes. She said all of this with a sweet smile, of course, because Brittany was always the nice one to outsiders. Despite everything, I decided to have a baby shower. I saved up money from my job at Target for months. I rented a small community center, bought decorations, ordered a cake, and invited about 20 people, mostly my coworkers and a few distant relatives. I invited my family too, hoping against hope that maybe this would be the moment they'd show they cared about me and my baby. The day of the shower arrived. I was 6 months pregnant, glowing despite everything, wearing a blue maternity dress I bought specifically for the occasion. The community center looked beautiful. I decorated it with blue and yellow balloons, baby-themed tablecloths, and centerpieces I'd made myself. The cake was gorgeous, a vanilla sheet cake with blue frosting and "Welcome Baby Thompson" written in elegant script. For the first hour, everything went perfectly. My coworkers from Target were there, my friend Kelly from high school, and even my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Davis, who'd become like a grandmother to me. We played games, opened gifts, and I felt genuinely happy for the first time in months. Then my family arrived. Mom walked in wearing a black dress, like she was attending a funeral, followed by Dad with his perpetually stern expression, and Brittany in a stunning red dress that was completely inappropriate for a baby shower but absolutely perfect for stealing attention. They didn't bring gifts. They didn't bring congratulations. They brought drama. "Well, this is quaint," Mom said, looking around like she'd stepped in something unpleasant. "I see you went with budget decorations." Dad just grunted and found a corner to stand in, checking his phone constantly like he had somewhere more important to be. Brittany, however, was all smiles. "Valerie, you look pregnant," she said with a laugh that wasn't quite mean enough to call her out on in front of everyone, but definitely wasn't kind. "This is such a sweet little party." I should have known something was up when Brittany kept checking her phone and grinning. She was practically vibrating with excitement, but I thought maybe she was just happy to be there. Again, naive me. We were in the middle of the gift opening when Brittany suddenly stood up and clinked her fork against her glass. "Excuse me, everyone. I have an announcement." My blood ran cold. This was my baby shower. My one day. But I knew Brittany well enough to know that she couldn't stand not being the center of attention for more than 5 minutes. I just got some incredible news this morning, Brittany continued, her voice carrying across the room. I got into Stanford, full scholarship. The room erupted. Everyone turned to congratulate Brittany, abandoning the baby shower entirely. My coworkers, who barely knew Brittany, were suddenly focused on her. My friend Kelly, who'd driven 2 hours to be there, was shaking Brittany's hand. Even Mrs. Davis was patting Brittany's arm and telling her how proud she must be. I sat there, surrounded by baby gifts and my beautiful cake, watching my own baby shower transform into Brittany's celebration party. And my parents, they were beaming. Dad actually smiled, something I hadn't seen him do in months. Mom was crying happy tears, hugging Brittany like she'd just won the Nobel Prize. We have to celebrate properly, Mom announced. This is such wonderful news. Valerie, do you have champagne? I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and remind everyone that this was supposed to be about my baby, about welcoming my child into the world. Instead, I quietly said, this is actually a baby shower. We're celebrating. Oh, please, Brittany interrupted with a wave of her hand. Stanford is a once-in-a-lifetime achievement. Babies happen all the time. This is way more important. The words hit me like a physical blow. Several people actually nodded in agreement. My own celebration was being dismissed as routine while Brittany's achievement was treated like a miracle. Valerie, go get some champagne from the car, Mom ordered. I brought some in case we needed to celebrate something important. And maybe some real food. This baby shower spread is fine for this, but we need proper celebration food for Stanford. I stood up slowly, my pregnant belly making it awkward, and went to Mom's car to get the champagne she'd apparently brought just in case. I stood there for a moment in the parking lot, breathing heavily, trying not to cry. This was supposed to be my day, my one day to feel special and celebrated. When I came back with the champagne and some crackers Mom had also brought, the party had completely transformed. People were toasting Brittany, talking about Stanford, asking about her future plans. My baby shower games were abandoned on tables. My carefully planned timeline was destroyed. The worst part? Brittany was loving every second of it. She kept glancing at me with this little smirk, like she was enjoying watching me suffer. She made sure to stand right in front of my cake when people were taking pictures, blocking the "Welcome Baby Thompson" message with her body. Then disaster struck, or rather, Brittany made it strike. While she was gesturing dramatically during a story about her Stanford interview, Brittany accidentally knocked over the champagne bottle. It crashed into my beautiful cake, sending frosting and crumbs flying everywhere. The cake that I'd saved for weeks to afford, that had my baby's name on it, was destroyed. Oops, Brittany said, not sounding sorry at all. I'm so clumsy when I'm excited. Sorry, Valerie. Everyone rushed to help clean up, but the damage was done. My cake was ruined, frosting was everywhere, and somehow this had become another reason to focus on Brittany and her accident. But Mom had other ideas about who should clean up. Valerie, get some paper towels and clean this up, she said sharply. This is your party, your mess to deal with. But Brittany knocked it over, I started. Don't you dare blame your sister for your clumsiness, Dad interjected. She's celebrating the biggest achievement of her life, and you're worried about some cake. I looked around the room, hoping someone would speak up for me. My coworkers were awkwardly looking away. Kelly was checking her phone. Mrs. Davis was gathering her purse, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama. So, I got the paper towels. I got on my hands and knees, 6 months pregnant, and started cleaning up frosting and cake crumbs while everyone else continued celebrating Brittany's Stanford acceptance at what used to be my baby shower. The worst part was Brittany's commentary. As I cleaned, she kept making little comments just loud enough for people to hear. Poor Valerie, always having to clean up messes. Good thing she's getting practice for when the baby comes. And, I hope she's better at taking care of a baby than she is at hosting parties. I was scrubbing a particularly stubborn spot of blue frosting when I felt a sharp pain in my side. Mom had kicked me. I still see spots. You pathetic failure. Crawl on your hands and knees until it's spotless, she hissed, just loud enough for me to hear, but not loud enough for the remaining guests to notice. I looked up at her in shock. I'd known Mom was disappointed in me, but physical violence? At my own baby shower? Dad moved closer, towering over me as I knelt on the floor. One kick wasn't enough for this lazy pig. She needs to learn her place at the bottom of this family. My sister, standing nearby with her champagne glass, smirked down at me. Next time, don't try to steal attention with your boring pregnancy announcements. Even when you squeeze out that mistake, do it quietly where nobody has to fake caring about you. I felt something break inside me. Not just my heart, but my spirit. These people, my family, had just physically assaulted me, called my unborn child a mistake, and humiliated me in front of everyone I cared about. And they did it with smiles on their faces, confident that I would take it like I always had. But I didn't argue. I didn't fight back. I just quietly finished cleaning, tears dripping onto the floor as I scrubbed. The few remaining guests made awkward excuses and left. My beautiful baby shower was over, transformed into a nightmare I'd never forget. After everyone left, I packed up the remaining decorations and gifts in silence. Brittany had already left with Mom and Dad to go celebrate at some fancy restaurant. I was alone in the community center, surrounded by the ruins of what should have been one of the happiest days of my life. I drove home to the small apartment I shared with Christopher, who was working a double shift at the warehouse. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, just staring at our front door, wondering how I was going to tell him what happened. How do you explain to someone that your own family physically assaulted you at your baby shower? The worst part was that I could still feel the phantom pain from Mom's kick. Every time I shifted in the car seat, I was reminded of that moment when her foot connected with my ribs. I touched the spot gently, wondering if there would be a bruise. I hoped not. I didn't want Christopher to see physical evidence of what had happened. He was already protective of me and the baby, and I was afraid of what he might do if he saw that my own mother had hurt me. When I finally went inside, our little apartment felt like a sanctuary. Christopher had left a note on the kitchen counter, "Hope your shower was amazing. Can't wait to hear all about it. Love you both." Next to it was a single yellow rose in a mason jar. He'd picked it from Mrs. Davis's garden with her permission because he knew yellow roses were my favorite, but we couldn't afford to buy flowers. That small, thoughtful gesture broke something in me. Here was this man who worked double shifts to support us, who picked flowers from a neighbor's garden because he wanted to make me smile, who left sweet notes even when he was exhausted. And my own family, the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, had kicked me while I was pregnant. I went straight to bed. I didn't even change out of my blue maternity dress. I just lay there, one hand on my belly, talking to my baby. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry they said those things about you. You're not a mistake. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I promise I will never let them treat you the way they've treated me." But even as I made that promise, I felt hollow inside. How could I protect my child from people who were supposed to be family? How could I explain to my son or daughter why their grandparents didn't love them? How could I make sure they never felt the way I felt right now? I must have fallen asleep because the next thing I knew, Christopher was gently shaking me awake. It was nearly midnight, and he looked exhausted from his shift, but his eyes were immediately alert with concern when he saw me still in my dress from the shower. "Valerie, honey, what's wrong? How was the shower?" I looked at him, this kind, hard-working man who had never once made me feel like I wasn't good enough, and I started crying. Not the quiet tears I'd shed earlier, but deep, body-shaking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere I didn't know existed. Christopher immediately sat on the bed and pulled me into his arms, mindful of my belly. "What happened, Valerie? Talk to me." So, I told him everything, about Brittany's announcement, about the party being hijacked, about cleaning up the cake mess, about the kick, about the cruel words. Christopher's face went through a range of emotions: confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally a cold fury I'd never seen before. "She kicked you," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. Your mother kicked you while you were pregnant? Christopher, please, don't. Don't what? Don't be angry that your family physically assaulted my girlfriend and our unborn child. He stood up, pacing the small bedroom. Valerie, this isn't normal. This isn't how families treat each other. I know, I said quietly. I know it's not normal, but it's my family. It's all I've ever known. Christopher stopped pacing and knelt beside the bed, taking my hands in his. Valerie, listen to me. You are worth so much more than how they treat you. You're kind. You're strong. You're going to be an amazing mother. And our baby is going to be surrounded by love and respect. I promise you that. But what if they never change? What if they always see me as a failure? Then that's their loss, Christopher said firmly. And honestly, after what they did today, I don't want them around our child anyway. I don't want our son or daughter to grow up thinking it's normal to be treated like that. His words hit me like a revelation. I'd been so focused on wanting my family's approval, on trying to earn their love, that I'd never considered that maybe their love wasn't worth having. Maybe protecting my child meant protecting them from my family. What do you think I should do? I asked. Christopher was quiet for a moment, then said, I think you should do whatever makes you feel strong and safe. And I think you should remember that family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up for you, who celebrates with you, who protects you. Your coworker showed up today. Kelly drove 2 hours to be there. Mrs. Davis brought you a gift she knitted herself. That's family. He added, more seriously, I think you should see a doctor tomorrow. Being kicked like that while pregnant, we need to make sure you and the baby are okay. I nodded, knowing he was right. The pain in my ribs had lessened, but Christopher was right to be concerned. I thought about that as Christopher helped me change into pajamas and brought me a glass of water. He was right. The people who had truly celebrated with me today weren't my biological family. They were the people who had chosen to be in my life, who had supported me without conditions or expectations. But there was something else nagging at me. Something about Brittany's announcement that felt wrong. I'd been so devastated by the family drama that I hadn't really processed the timeline. But now that I was thinking clearly, something didn't add up. Christopher, I said as he was getting ready for bed, what month do college acceptance letters usually come out? He paused, his shirt halfway off. I think it depends on the school, but usually March or April for most places. Why? Brittany announced her Stanford acceptance today. It's May. Christopher frowned. That is weird. Maybe she got it a while ago and just wanted to announce it at your shower. Maybe, I said, but I wasn't convinced. Something about Brittany's behavior, about the timing, about the way she'd been acting lately, felt off. That night, lying in bed next to Christopher, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Brittany's face when she'd made her announcement, about the way she'd been checking her phone all day, about how she'd seemed almost manic with excitement. And I kept thinking about the way she'd smirked at me while I cleaned up the cake, like she was enjoying my humiliation. Around 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and got up to use the bathroom. As I passed our small desk in the living room, I saw Christopher's laptop. Almost without thinking, I opened it and started researching Stanford's admission process. What I found made my blood run cold. Stanford typically sends acceptance letters in mid-December for early decision and late March for regular admission. They don't send acceptance letters in May, ever. But maybe Brittany had gotten in during the regular admission cycle and just hadn't told anyone until now. I dug deeper, looking up Stanford's communication timelines, their notification processes, everything I could find. The more I read, the more convinced I became that something was very wrong with Brittany's story. Stanford doesn't just randomly send acceptance letters in May. They have strict timelines, and they stick to them. I thought about Brittany's behavior over the past few weeks. She'd been getting emails that she'd quickly close when anyone came around. She'd been taking phone calls in private, often sounding stressed or upset. She'd been snappy and irritable, which wasn't like her. Usually, she was sickeningly sweet, at least on the surface. What if she hadn't gotten into Stanford at all? What if she'd been rejected and had been hiding it from my parents? What if her announcement today was a lie designed to steal attention from my baby shower? The thought made me feel sick, but it also made me feel something else: anger. Pure, crystalline anger. If Brittany had lied about Stanford, if she'd destroyed my baby shower with a lie, then she deserved whatever consequences came her way. I closed the laptop and went back to bed. But I didn't sleep. I lay there, planning. If Brittany was lying about Stanford, there would be evidence, rejection emails, maybe, or correspondence with the school. And if I could find that evidence, well, my parents valued achievement above everything else. They'd humiliated me and physically assaulted me because they thought Brittany had achieved something incredible. How would they react if they found out their golden child had not only failed to achieve anything but had lied about it? I smiled in the darkness. For the first time since the disaster at my baby shower, I felt like I had some control over the situation. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. I was going to find out the truth about Brittany's Stanford acceptance. And if she was lying, which I was becoming more and more convinced she was, I was going to make sure my parents knew exactly what kind of person their perfect daughter really was. But first, Christopher insisted I go to the hospital to get checked out. The emergency room doctor confirmed that both the baby and I were fine, but she documented the assault in my medical records and gave me information about domestic violence resources. Even if it's family, she said gently, this isn't okay. You and your baby deserve to be safe. That night, lying in bed, I made a decision. I was done being the family punching bag. I was done accepting cruelty and abuse. I was about to become a mother, and I needed to be strong for my child. But more than that, I needed to be smart. I spent the next few hours on my phone, researching. I looked up every piece of information I could find about Stanford admissions, about Brittany's high school record, about the timeline of acceptances. Something felt wrong about her announcement. Stanford notifications typically came out in December for early admission and March for regular admission. It was now May. Then I remembered something. Brittany had been acting strange for weeks, secretive and anxious. She'd been getting mail that she'd quickly hide, taking phone calls in private. I'd assumed it was college-related stress, but what if it was something else? The next morning, I woke up with a plan. I got dressed carefully, putting on my most professional-looking maternity outfit. I drove to my parents' house, where Brittany was staying until she left for Stanford in the fall. I knocked on the door, and Mom answered. She looked surprised to see me. Valerie, what are you doing here? I wanted to congratulate Brittany properly, I said with a smile. Yesterday was so chaotic, I didn't get a chance to really celebrate with her. Mom's expression softened slightly. That's mature of you. Brittany's in the kitchen. I found Brittany at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone. She looked up when I entered, and I saw a flash of something: guilt? Fear? Cross her face before she smiled. Valerie, what a surprise. Come to grovel some more? I sat down across from her, still smiling. Actually, I wanted to ask you about Stanford. I'm so proud of you. Can I see your acceptance letter? Brittany's smile faltered. What? Your acceptance letter. I'd love to read it. I've never seen a Stanford acceptance letter before. Brittany's face went pale. I don't have it with me. It's in my room. That's okay, I'll wait. Can you go get it? Brittany stood up quickly. Actually, I have to get ready for a thing. Maybe another time. But I was already walking toward the stairs. I'll come with you. I'm so excited to see it. Valerie, no. But I was already heading up the stairs, with Brittany trailing behind me, panic in her voice. Valerie, wait, this isn't a good time. I pushed open her bedroom door and immediately saw what she was trying to hide. On her desk were several printed emails from colleges, including one from Stanford. The email was open on her laptop screen, and I could see the first line, "We regret to inform you." Brittany rushed past me and tried to close her laptop, but I was faster. I read the Stanford rejection email quickly. Brittany had been rejected from Stanford. She'd been rejected from Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, too. The only acceptances she had were from local state schools. "Valerie, please, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I said, my voice calm despite the rage building inside me. "You lied about Stanford. You destroyed my baby shower with a lie." Brittany's face crumpled. I couldn't tell them I got rejected. You know how they are. They expect me to be perfect. I was going to figure something out, maybe reapply next year, or what? Live a lie forever? Brittany started crying. "Please don't tell them. Please, Valerie. I'll do anything. I'll apologize for yesterday. I'll make it up to you. Just please don't tell them." I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I saw her as she really was, not the golden child, not the perfect daughter, but a scared, insecure young woman who was so afraid of disappointing our parents that she'd rather destroy her sister's happiness than admit her own failures. "Brittany," I said quietly, "what you did yesterday was unforgivable. You didn't just lie about Stanford. You physically stood by while Mom kicked me. You called my baby a mistake. You ruined what should have been one of the happiest days of my life." I know, I'm sorry." "No," I said, cutting her off. "You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference." I walked out of her room, leaving her crying on her bed. I went downstairs, where Mom was in the kitchen, humming while she prepared what looked like a celebration breakfast. "Mom," I said, "I need to show you something." I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot I'd taken of the Stanford rejection email. Mom looked at it, confused. "What's this?" "Read it." Mom picked up my phone and read the email. I watched her face change from confusion to shock to fury. Her hands began shaking. "Brittany," she screamed. "Brittany, get down here right now." The scream was so loud and so full of rage that I actually jumped. In all my years of being the family disappointment, I'd never heard Mom use that tone. That was the tone reserved for unforgivable sins. Brittany came downstairs slowly, her face red and puffy from crying. Dad emerged from his home office, looking annoyed at the interruption. "What's all the screaming about?" Dad asked. Mom held up my phone. "Your perfect daughter lied to us. She didn't get into Stanford. She got rejected." The silence that followed was deafening. Dad's face went through several emotions: confusion, disbelief, and then a cold, terrible anger that I'd never seen directed at Brittany. "Is this true?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Brittany looked at me with pure hatred, then back at our parents. I can explain." "Is this true?" Dad roared. Brittany flinched. "Yes," she whispered. What happened next was unlike anything I'd ever witnessed. The golden child, the perfect daughter, the one who could do no wrong, was about to experience what I'd lived with my entire life. Dad's face turned red. "You lied to us. You made us celebrate a lie. You made us look like fools." "I was going to tell you when." Mom shrieked. "When were you going to tell us? After we told everyone? After we bought you a car for graduation? After we spent thousands of dollars on your Stanford wardrobe?" Brittany was crying harder now. "I was scared. I knew you'd be disappointed." "Disappointed?" Dad's voice was ice cold. "Brittany, we are beyond disappointed. We are disgusted. Do you have any idea what you've done? And yesterday," Mom continued, her voice shaking with rage, "you ruined Valerie's baby shower for a lie. You made us treat Valerie badly for a lie." This was the moment I'd been waiting for. My parents were finally seeing Brittany for who she really was, not perfect, not golden, but a liar who had manipulated them into hurting me. "What colleges did you actually get into?" Dad demanded. Brittany mumbled something. Speak up. State University and Community College, Brittany said, her voice barely audible. The silence was deafening. State University was where I dropped out from. Community college was where failures went, in my parents' minds. Brittany had fallen from Stanford to my level. You, Dad said slowly, are a disgrace to this family. Thomas, Mom started. No, Linda. She lied to us. She made us hurt Valerie for nothing. She humiliated us. He turned to Brittany. Get out. Dad, please. Get out. Dad screamed. Pack your things and get out of my house. You want to be a failure like your sister? You can live like your sister. Brittany turned to me, her eyes pleading. Valerie, please, tell him it's okay. Tell him you forgive me. I looked at her for a long moment. Brittany, yesterday you stood by while Mom kicked me. You called my unborn baby a mistake. You ruined my baby shower for a lie. And now you want me to save you? Please. No, I said simply. You made your bed. Now lie in it. Brittany's face changed. The pleading expression was replaced by pure hatred. You vindictive, you planned this. I did, I said calmly. I planned to discover the truth. And I planned to make sure Mom and Dad knew exactly what kind of person their perfect daughter really is. You're going to regret this, Brittany hissed. The only thing I regret, I said, is not standing up to you sooner. Brittany stormed out of the kitchen, and I could hear her upstairs, slamming things around as she packed. Mom and Dad stood in the kitchen, looking like their world had collapsed. Valerie, Mom said slowly, about yesterday. Yesterday you physically assaulted me at my baby shower, I said, my voice steady. You called me a pathetic failure. You made me clean up Brittany's mess while she celebrated a lie. Mom's face went white. We didn't know. You didn't know she was lying about Stanford, but you knew you were hurting me. You knew you were ruining my baby shower. You knew you were being cruel, and you did it anyway. Dad cleared his throat. Valerie, we may have been harsh yesterday, but we thought Brittany had achieved something incredible. And that made it okay to kick your pregnant daughter? I asked. The silence stretched between us. Brittany came downstairs with 2 suitcases, her face streaked with tears and mascara. I hope you're happy, she said to me. You've destroyed everything. I didn't destroy anything, I said. I just revealed the truth. You destroyed everything with your lies. Brittany left without another word. I heard her car start and drive away. Mom and Dad stood in the kitchen, looking lost. For the first time in my life, they didn't know what to say to me. I'm going to go now, I said. I have a baby to prepare for. Valerie, wait, Mom said. Maybe we could talk about this. About yesterday? There's nothing to talk about, I said. You showed me exactly how you feel about me and my child. The only difference between yesterday and today is that now you know Brittany isn't perfect either. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. By the way, I said, when my baby is born, don't expect an invitation to the hospital. Don't expect pictures. Don't expect to be grandparents. You made it clear yesterday that you don't care about me or my child. Nothing has changed except that now you know Brittany is a liar, too. I left them standing in their kitchen, surrounded by the ruins of their perfect family dynamic. 3 weeks later, Christopher and I received an invitation to Brittany's community college graduation. I threw it in the trash. 4 weeks later, Mom called to apologize and asked if we could work things out. I hung up. 3 months later, I gave birth to a beautiful, healthy baby boy. We named him Ethan, and he was perfect. Christopher and I were over the moon, and our real friends, the ones who had actually cared about my baby shower, came to visit and brought gifts and love. Before Ethan's birth, I'd had to make an emergency trip to the hospital the day after my baby shower. The kick to my ribs had caused some concerning pain, and my doctor insisted on monitoring me and the baby for 24 hours. Thankfully, everything was fine, but the incident was documented in my medical records, something that would become important later. My parents found out about Ethan's birth through Mrs. Davis, who had seen us bringing him home from the hospital. They showed up at our apartment uninvited with flowers and gifts, expecting to be welcomed as loving grandparents. I didn't let them in. "Valerie, please," Mom said through the door. "We want to meet our grandson." "He's not your grandson," I said. "You made that clear at my baby shower." "We've learned from our mistakes," Dad said. "We want to make things right." "You didn't make mistakes," I said. "You made choices. You chose to hurt me. You chose to prioritize Brittany over me. You chose to kick me while I was pregnant. Those weren't mistakes. Those were choices." They stood outside for 20 minutes, pleading, but I didn't open the door. Eventually, they left. Brittany tried to contact me too, through mutual friends and social media. She wanted to explain and make amends. I blocked her everywhere. 6 months later, I heard through the grapevine that Brittany had dropped out of community college and was working at a retail store similar to where I used to work. The irony wasn't lost on me. A year later, Mom sent me a long letter about how they'd realized their mistakes and wanted to be part of Ethan's life. She wrote about how they'd been too hard on me and how they'd learned to be more understanding. She promised they'd changed. I wrote back with a single line, "You didn't lose me when you discovered Brittany's lies. You lost me when you kicked me at my baby shower." It's been 2 years now. Ethan is walking and talking, and he's the joy of my life. Christopher and I got married in a small ceremony with people who actually love us, my chosen family, Mrs. Davis, Kelly, my coworkers who became real friends. They're the ones who celebrated with us. My biological family? They're still trying to contact me. They send birthday cards for Ethan that I throw away unopened. They drive by our new house sometimes, hoping to catch a glimpse of their grandson. But here's the thing about consequences, they're not just punishments. They're also learning opportunities. And what I learned from my baby shower disaster is that I deserve better than people who would literally kick me while I'm down. Brittany never went back to college. She works at a grocery store now and lives in a studio apartment. I know this because Mrs. Davis occasionally updates me, not because I ask, but because she thinks I should know. Brittany has tried to reach out to me multiple times, but I've never responded. Mom and Dad have aged visibly in the past 2 years. Mrs. Davis says they look haunted, and that Mom cries whenever she sees children playing in the neighborhood. Dad retired early and spends most of his time at home, staring out the window. Do I feel bad for them? Sometimes, but then I remember the feeling of my mother's foot connecting with my ribs while I was pregnant. I remember my father calling me a lazy pig while I cleaned up cake that was meant to celebrate my baby. I remember my sister calling my child a mistake. And I remember that I promised my unborn son that I would never let them treat him the way they treated me. That's a promise I intend to keep. Some people might think my revenge was too harsh, that I should forgive and forget, that family is family, that people make mistakes. But here's what I've learned, there's a difference between making a mistake and revealing your true character. What happened at my baby shower wasn't a mistake. It was a revelation. It showed me exactly who these people really were when they thought they could get away with it. And once someone shows you who they are, believe them. My son will grow up surrounded by love and respect. He'll know that he's wanted, celebrated, and cherished. He'll never have to clean up someone else's mess while being kicked and called names. He'll never have to wonder if his own family actually loves him. And if my biological family wants to be part of his life, they'll have to do more than just apologize. They'll have to prove that they've fundamentally changed who they are as people. Given that it's been 2 years and they're still trying to minimize what they did as mistakes and being too hard on me, I don't think that's going to happen. But that's okay. Ethan and I are better off without them. The morning after my baby shower, when Mom found that rejection letter on the kitchen table, she started screaming. But she wasn't screaming at me for once. She was screaming at the golden child who had fallen from grace. And that, I think, was the sweetest revenge of all. Some might say I orchestrated Brittany's downfall, but I prefer to think of it as revealing the truth. Brittany orchestrated her own downfall the moment she decided to lie about Stanford and destroy my baby shower in the process. I just made sure the truth came to light. And sometimes, the truth is the most devastating weapon of all. Update, 3 months later. I wanted to add an update because several people have asked what happened to Brittany and whether my parents ever truly apologized. Brittany's life has continued to spiral. She was fired from the grocery store for stealing. Apparently, she was taking expensive items and either keeping them or selling them. She's now working at a fast food restaurant and has moved back in with my parents. The irony of her having to live with them while I built a beautiful life away from them isn't lost on me. As for my parents, they've escalated their attempts to contact me. They've tried showing up at my workplace, sending gifts through mutual friends, and even attempted to contact Christopher's family to get them on their side. It's gotten to the point where I've had to involve a lawyer to send them a cease and desist letter. The most telling incident happened last month. My parents somehow found out where I take Ethan for his pediatric appointments. They waited in the parking lot and approached me as I was putting Ethan in his car seat. "Please, Valerie," Mom said, tears in her eyes. "Just let us hold him once. We're his grandparents." I looked at her, this woman who had kicked me while I was pregnant, and said, "You're not his grandparents. You're strangers who hurt his mother." "We made a mistake," Dad started. "You made a choice," I interrupted. "And this is the consequence of that choice." They stood there as I drove away. And I felt nothing but relief, no guilt, no sadness, just the deep satisfaction of knowing that I was protecting my son from people who would hurt him the way they hurt me. The truth is, they haven't changed. They're still the same people who value appearances over genuine love, who show favoritism to toxic levels, and who think a simple sorry can undo years of abuse. But I've changed. I've learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to refuse to let toxic people back into your life, even if they share your DNA. Ethan is thriving. He's surrounded by love from people who chose to be in our lives because they genuinely care about us. That's worth more than any forced family relationship. And Brittany? She's living the life she helped create for me all those years. The difference is, I had the strength to build something better. She's still waiting for someone else to fix her problems. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply living well while refusing to let toxic people benefit from your success.